Hello.
Hi.
Hello. How's everyone doing this afternoon?
Great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Doing good?
Doing great.
Doing well. This is Kirk Adams from American Foundation for the Blind, and I'm in a vehicle for the next 3 hours. So I'm going to mute so you don't hear the road sounds unless I need to talk.
Doesn't sound too bad, so good.
Hello. All right, we got Kurt in here.
Hey.
Kurt, welcome. Tyler, Chris, Dean.
What's going on?
Hi.
Ben, hey, what's up? What up, Kelly, Leland, Ms. Darcy? Hello to everyone. How are we doing today?
Awesome.
Great. Doing good.
Great.
Doing well.
Great.
Incredible. Thank you. Yes, thank you everyone for jumping on right on time. Everyone was able to find the link in their calendar. Is that something that's there, correct? In your calendars? We have
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, so these are going to be Wednesdays, just so you have an idea of like time blocks between 4 and 7. We're going to do our best to try and be on a consistent time. Just want to be in communication that it might vary between those times. So just like, so you know, and like prepare for that. Is everyone complete with that?
Oh yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll definitely do our best to get you that information by Monday, so you can count on it by Monday. All right. How's everyone been doing with the trainings? Any questions on the trainings?
No questions for me.
Beautiful. So we'll give Sean a few more minutes. If not, what we're going to be working on today is that we're going to be working on step 1, rapport, and the questions asked to do so. I want to make sure we give Sean a few more minutes before jumping in.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Fernando? What's up, everybody? How we doing out there?
Hey, Sean.
Great.
Yeah,
Doing good.
awesome. Ready to go. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. How about if I move a little bit? I just want to see, how does that work, Fernando? Is that too far away?
It sounds a little different than speaking into the phone.
Got it. Okay, got it. All right, so I'll stay more centrally located for now.
Great.
So hello, everybody, and welcome aboard. Sean Callaghy here, and we are with our Unblinded Training launching and ready to go. So today, we discussed this morning, for those that were on the line, the critical importance of the results formula. So what we're going to do today is begin to give everybody an overview of the results formula and making the very bold proclamation that this formula is the formula that helps people create the acceleration to produce whatever outcomes and results that folks want to create in their life. Like a small claim, but a huge claim. And that's like what's happening. So, I'd love to introduce for a second, though, Fernando, and talk to Fernando a little bit about this. Rob Gill is going to be on a little bit as well. But Fernando, you've been in the world of personal development for a long time and had experience with and information around a lot of different technologies. So what is it that you see here? You know what, guys? Could everybody just mute themselves real quick? Just mute, and then Fernando, maybe just mute yourself real quick, please. And I promise we're going to get this worked out for next week, where we'll have I'll control the mute capability. So Fernando, what's present for you, and why have you become so excited about what we're doing here?
What's present for me is that, yes, thank you for, I have spent years in personal development, what we call human technology, which, we summed up yesterday so beautifully as like a language. There's like English, Spanish, and then there's integrity-based human influence. So that distinction alone makes a whole difference. And the fact that it's a formula that is teachable, transferable, and scalable is beautiful. And that kind of all rhymed, and I just made that up as I go. But the way that it works and the way that it can be equipped in any situation is marvelous. And the minor distinctions within them are like mind-numbing. Like, for example, on the car right here, I had one. And you said yesterday at the training with Rob Gill that this word check-in. So when we speak to people, we check in. And that was interesting to me. And I thought about it. And that's going through step 1 of emotional rapport every time. And it's a way of continuing frictionlessness. So being able to have like that language for myself, and then to like play within them and then have these micro distinctions, like that makes all the difference. Like that's explosive acceleration, just unlocking that one bit, which is a micro bit within the formula.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? You got me, Fernando?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as we talk about this, and so thank you. We're going to pause at different points for questions. But today, we're going to begin to focus on the fact that there's a results formula. And you say, like, what results? I don't know. We're going to talk about how you select the results and outcomes you want next week. But that will be, to me, you go, well, that would be logical and sensible we start there. But sometimes when we start there, it could feel a little bit too common with people. People could feel like it's something they know, something that they've heard before. So instead, I want to jump right into some of the most wildly unique and powerful aspects of the technology, and that's going to be in the middle component, which is our influence mastery. But really quickly, taking a step back, it's our process mastery, our influence mastery, and our self-mastery that are the components that decide whether or not we produce any result that we want. Process mastery, influence mastery, and self-mastery. And process mastery, just super quickly, and we're going to talk about this a ton, is the space of one, modeling. So process mastery is about modeling. It's also about falling in love with how we measure and monitor things like numbers. So process mastery is about modeling, it's about numbers, and it's about time blocking. And that'll be something we come back to when we talk about ecosystem mergers each day, when we talk about your frictionlessness, how you're creating more sales meetings in less time, like with lower investment. We'll talk about all those things regularly. But today, we're going to go into a deep dive on influence mastery, step 1, which is the building of emotional rapport. And we're going to also share that influence mastery is the space of going from hello to yes with people, and your self-mastery is the formula by which you consistently get yourself to take action. So process mastery, influence mastery, self-mastery. And these aren't going to be like, there's not going to be 97 of these things. There's going to be things under them, but your mastery of your process, your mastery of your influence, and your mastery of yourself is going to be the grounds that that are the determining factors whether or not you create your dreams and your breakthroughs. It's a new way of thinking. You know, we think a lot about, like, we have a language for it. So, Fernando, before we met, for example, let's unmute yourself if you're muted, please.
Yes.
Before we met, if I was going to say to you, now watch this, folks. If I was going to say to you, hey, how is it that you go about succeeding? Like, what is success? You know, how do you define, actually not what is success, how do you determine how to produce a result? So if I asked you that question, what would you have said before I met you? Like, how do you produce results? Like, you have goals. How do you make them happen? You would have said what?
Before I met you, what I would have said was, I have to work hard. I have to go to a lot of networking events. I have to meet people. I have to build relationships. I have to figure out more ways to get referrals. It was like, those were like the things that I would do at a expedited, like, crazy rate for, whatever goals those were.
Right. Now, if I asked you right now, again,
Yes.
Watch this, everybody. Hey, Fernando, the day before I met you, if you had to explain how to produce the results you wanted, what would you have said? I'm repeating the question. And just tell me your answer again.
What I would have said before I met you?
Yeah. I'm asking the same question. Go ahead. Again.
Okay.
Give me your best version of the same answer again.
So what I would have done before I met you is that I would have worked at a fast rate. I would have gone to a lot of networking events. I would have tried my best to build relationships. I would have found people to give me referrals, and I would have doubled my time.
Okay. So those two answers were different, right? The two answers were different. And that by itself demonstrates the first critical point. We don't exist with a formula and a mechanism to produce the results we want. We go to all these different trainings, we hear all this different information and content, but at the end of the day, we don't have a mechanism and process. So when I first began my work in this space 22 years ago, I said, you know what? I said this morning, I'll say it again. Hardworking, caring, loyal, dedicated people who go to networking events are often broke. Is that fair, Fernando?
Yes.
Yeah. So what we do here is we have an access. So if somebody goes like, well, what's your formula? How'd you do it? Okay. It's my process mastery, my influence mastery, and my self-mastery. That dictates whether or not I have every result I have or I don't have the results that I'm looking for. And that's it. And they go, okay, well, what's process mastery? Well, process mastery is how you produce any result of what you do in mapping it, and it involves time blocking, it involves measuring and monitoring, and it involves modeling, time blocking, and falling in love with numbers or measuring and monitoring. Well, what's human influence? Like, how do you do that? So if I said to you, Fernando, the day before I met you, hey, Fernando, like, how do you influence people? Like, well, by the way, Fernando, do you think influence is important? The day before I met you, would you have said yes or no?
The answer is yes, and not the way that I know now.
Okay, so you've increased your clarity that influence is important, and like a superpower and an essential.
Yes.
But you did know it was somewhat important the day before I met you. Fair?
Correct.
Okay. So in saying that, if I were to say to you, hey, Fernando, how do you influence people? The day before I met you, what would you have said?
You have to be nice to them. You have to get to know them. You have to see, what they're interested in. You need to spend quality time. Those are the things that come to mind before we met.
Okay. So would you say that you had a formula, a system, and a process to connect and build a relationship with people the day before I met you?
A formula and a process? No. I had an intention, a feeling, and like some things that had worked, but not like a A to Z roadmap ×2 type of thing. That I did not have.
Okay. And so as you've had, well, let me ask you this, all right? Did you have a duplicatable process to teach other people how to influence and go from hello to yes with people?
Hard no.
Hard no.
Hard
right?
no.
So in working with people and partnering with people and hiring people, did you have any process in which to teach them how to go from hello to yes with people?
No, I did not have a way to teach them.
Okay. So now that you have a model, which by the way has 4 steps, 10 indispensable elements, and 4 energies, like that, you have that now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen acceleration in your ability to build relationships with people? Now, by the way, before I met you, did you have high skill, high confidence in your ability to have people be drawn to you and say yes to you?
Yes.
Okay, so you did before.
Yes.
And how much have you seen a significant increase in that?
These last 60 days have been the fastest acceleration in my life ever.
Okay. And it's the same process. Rob Gill was just in and out of the room. He had to pop in and do something else for a moment. But Rob Gill has seen acceleration from 8 meetings a month to 25 to 150 to 175, as you've heard before, but also an increase in the quality of those meetings. And that's what's at stake in this process of influence. That's how I had 2 top 100 national jury verdicts. Both cases, we had offers of 0 going into trial. In both cases, the judges, adversary counsel, my client's prior counsel, other people my client knew that were attorneys told him he had no chance to win. But yet, when it was done, we had won 40 out of 40 witnesses. The jury was mocking, laughing, and scoffing the lies of the other side. And a judge that had a court rule, the amazing Judge Campbell, one of the greatest federal judges in this country, although I do disagree with his court rule that says there can be no emotion in his courtroom, because that's sort of bizarre and just not how humans function. I was able to bring Judge Campbell to the very emotional point when they came back with the verdict of reading it to the entire courtroom as his clear emotional statement of F you to the other side. Because like Judge Campbell is kind of like the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, and he thought he didn't function with a heart, but of course he was an incredible person of heart, because it's how we all operate. And this mechanism and process, I could tell you story after story after story, from the time when I couldn't believe that people whose pictures on the front page of the newspaper having real problems, facing massive issues that quite frankly they were innocent from, not criminal but civil, dealing with insurance companies and wild dynamics, that they were sitting there making decisions to hire me or a law firm that was sitting in a beautiful ivory tower You know, I always say that you can gauge the quality of a law firm in inverse proportion. So you can gauge the quality of a law firm in inverse proportion to how much marble they have. Meaning, the more marble they have, typically, the less effective they are at representing their clients, but the more effective they are at having big companies think they're really successful. So we were competing with firms like that as I was sitting in a 400 square foot office without a website and without a business card, and having, I remember this clearly, the wife of the guy that's sitting there, and by the way, I was asking for a $100,000 retainer, and these other bigger firms were asking for 25. And at the end of the meeting, I was able to have these people, which started with the wife saying to the husband, "Are you nuts? What are we even doing here?" saying yes at the end. And by the way, they were right to say yes. And the results came through that way. And I had no credibility whatsoever as an attorney yet. None. But was still able to have them say the truth, which was that I was the best answer for them because of my integrity, my courage, my ferocity, my ability to create emotional, energetic transportation, all of those things. So it's these superpowers that sit in the space of influence mastery. It's 4 steps. It's 10 elements. It's 4 energies. Now, you're going to experience massive repetition from me. Massive repetition. Because the space of personal development so often is not the space of Vince Lombardi, not the space of John Wooden, the most successful college basketball coach in history. John Wooden, Vince Lombardi, often seen as one of the most successful football coaches ever, or Bill Belichick, who I happen to not be a fan of because I'm a Jet fan, but you cannot argue with the man's results because sometimes success can be repetitive. And we're going to have fun, and we're going to intersperse like energy and laughs to keep connected on these online trainings. But at the same time, I'm here to share with you that Tony Robbins says it, repetition is the mother of skill. Repetition is the mother of skill. And integrity-based influence mastery, its 4 steps, its 10 elements, its 4 energies are all about massive repetition. And the cornerstone principle of mastery, and this would be one of the top takeaways from today's call, to just wire this into yourself, that mastery is not the space of new. Mastery is not the space of new. Mastery is the space of realizing that once you're great at something, exponential returns come from getting a little bit better. Fernando has been engaged in a high level of mastery study of the 4 steps, the 10 elements, the 4 energies. I'm incredibly impressed. His desire to teach this, his desire to share this has been extraordinarily high. And once you start teaching something and sharing something, your skills only begin to accelerate from that juncture. So I found 2 decades ago, when I began to teach people the things I was learning, the better I became rapidly better. And in addition, I began to see new distinctions. I began to see new applications. So the first thing I'm encouraging you to think about is repetition in the space of mastery. I'm also encouraging you to increase your mastery by dramatically increasing how often you communicate about it. And Fernando, if you could share, and you had a beautiful distinction we talked about earlier, the idea of talking to people about this and how that's accelerating your own learning and understanding.
Yes. So teaching definitely is something that I enjoy. And I've also learned that in that space, in teaching or in talking, because talking is teaching, or conveying ideas, conveying thoughts, creating possibilities. So when we're in the formula, and it's funny because the language is like, we're in the formula because we're playing the game of the formula. So once we're there, the acceleration in conversation is extraordinary. And that's
good.
No, continue.
And you're gonna experience like trying to drink out of a fire hose. But the idea of the daily huddles, the idea of the weekly trainings is designed to all of a sudden you're immersed in a new language. You've moved to a new country. You're in a new space. And the next thing you know, wow, I'm speaking the language and I'm seeing it show up in how I'm functioning, and I'm noticing when people aren't building emotional rapport. I'm seeing at level 5 transformational listening how nervous somebody is in their communication, how they're about to ask me for something. I can see it. And I could see where they're really struggling in their congruence because their words, their vocal qualities, their body language, like they're not aligning. All of these things are happening for you. And we're going to be giving you massive amounts of resources over the course of our work together to help you continue to accelerate in everything that you're doing. Okay? So with all that said, basic takeaway is this. This is drop the mic, mother effing, kicking technology that is unparalleled, captures everything that you're doing out there in the world, is going to help you understand how to accelerate your meetings at a higher quality, go from hello to yes with people, and get yourself to actually do it. That's what process mastery, influence mastery, self-mastery, and the Calgary results formula brings to the table, because it is the formula of formulas. That's my bold claim. And it subsumes all content information, because all content, essentially, if it's process mastery driven, falls under the heading of modeling. And we're going to model stuff. But what we're really in the space of modeling here is marketing and sales acceleration. That's what this space is about and what you're here for. Okay? With that said, let's drop in. Okay? Let's begin to dig deeper. There's a model of going from hello to yes with people. There's a model to it. And when you hear brilliant people like Tony Robbins and others communicate about the idea of rapport being important, and Tony Robbins is not the first person I ever heard say the name rapport. It was his competitive edge program, though, that he made a big deal about it. I'm like, okay, rapport, this is interesting. And I heard a lot of ideas rapidly about how somebody might create rapport. But over time, I was like, I want to make this simpler. I want to create a formula, a mechanism that somebody can create rapport every time. But before we talk about how to create rapport, let's talk about what it actually is. When you meet people, we have such a differential in how we perceive. Like my grandfather would say, God rest his soul, Pop, like I could, hit a baseball through somebody's window across the street in Long Beach Island, and all of a sudden there's a problem. And if the person got upset, I hit a baseball through their window, my grandfather would be mad at those people. Like I was right, they were wrong, even though I hit a baseball through their window. And the reason is because I had massive rapport with my grandfather. And we create wild distortion, we, all of us, everyone, when we don't know somebody and they're a stranger, when we know somebody and don't like them, when we know somebody and they're okay, when we know somebody and we like them, or when we feel like we know somebody and we love them. There is massive differential in our ability to create influence and create a shared reality with people. The ability to go from hello to yes. It varies wildly. That's rapport. Rapport opens up the lines of communication between us. Rapport ensures that we're heard. Rapport ensures that we're not getting a default no. We're moving away from that. Rapport just opens up the listening. It's step 1 of the 4 steps of integrity-based human influence, and it's all we're going to begin to dip our toe into today. Because this is not about tips. This is not about an idea. This is about a model to master. Like, you didn't get tips on like how to ride a bicycle. You got information and content. You don't get tips on how to type on a keyboard. Like, if you know how to type, you know how to type. You know where like ASDF is? You know where that is. You know where like JHKL semi is. Like, that's what they are. You know which fingers to put on the typewriter. It's not just like, oh, well, kind of figure it out. No, there's a mechanism to it. You put your pinky on the A. You put your fourth finger on the S. You put your middle finger on the D. You put your pointer finger on the F. Like, that's how it is. And then you move those fingers to other keys. You learn to type. In the beginning, it was like, what is this? How does this work? It's overwhelming. I can't do this. My fingers don't work that way. Now, many years later, I can type. I'm blind, literally. I could type 60 words a minute on my BlackBerry. because of the same mechanism of ASDF, JHKL, SIMA. It's why I still use that thing with the buttons falling off of it and to replace it, because it's a mechanism, it's a formula, it's repetitive, it's what it is. Emotional rapport, contrary to everybody's, like, not everybody's, but many people's belief, like, it's kind of like magic, and we just kind of connected, and it sort of just showed up, and there was like this energy between us and this chemistry. Like, you could leave that to chance. You can, and you're going to find it. And it's going to be like really cool when you do. Or you can create a predictable system. So you create that between you and virtually everyone you encounter that you decide to create rapport with, and give them the gift of creating rapport with them in a wildly predictable way. Like, that's what's at stake. Hey, Fernando, would that be pretty cool to have that? Like, would that be like a superpower or no?
That would be a mega superhuman power.
Right. And you begin to unlock that superpower. Other people in this call have begun to unlock that superpower. And I would say with great humility, I've unlocked that superpower. Okay. So that's that's why it's important. Like, that's the beginning of going from hello to yes. That's like how it all begins to work. Now, let's pause. There are 4 steps. This is just step 1 from going hello to yes. But that's not all there is. Because if we just had the 4 steps, then we'd be in this mechanical, robotic process and mechanism. And I've heard a lot of sales processes, which I'll contrast with, by the way, Dale Carnegie's work, his brilliant work in How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm going to contrast this with that in a moment. Because on the one hand, you may have sales systems and processes that are like really wired in to like mechanically go from step to step. Well, that doesn't work because it feels artificial. It feels like something that creates a disconnect more than it creates a connect, on the one hand. On the other hand, go read How to Win Friends and Influence People. And if you have, like, Fernando, have you read How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yes.
Great. Okay. And you're a smart guy, and I'm sure you found it to be a great book. It was something powerful, accessible. It was something that was maybe even motivational, inspiring, and it certainly gave you the idea that winning friends and influencing people was really important. Fair?
100% agree.
Great. Tell me how to win friends and influence people in 3 sentences.
Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Remember or say someone's name, and have integrity.
Okay. Do you think that there are a lot of people that don't condemn, criticize, and complain,
Mm-hmm.
that have integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and that use people's names, that are not engaged in high-level influence mastery?
100%.
Right. So my critique on that amazing book is it's not a formula. It's a bunch of separate, disconnected, wonderful ideas. Because, by the way, I read it, and I was so excited, at the same time so overwhelmed. Like, okay, like there's 97 ideas in this book that all sound really powerful and amazing, but how do I use this? Like, I'm walking into a networking meeting with people I don't know. I'm using their name, I'm saying hello, and they're not saying yes. And I feel awkward. It feels complicated. I'm not sure what to do. So what I'm doing right now is pre-framing, by the way, so that we're engaged in like defeating any degree of knowingness. And knowingness is the idea that we know when we don't. So we're creating new access, new acceleration, excitement, because that book is amazing. Amazing. And it was amazing when the telephone was invented. And now we have iPhones. That was like the beginning, and we're now at like 10.0 with the integrity-based human influence model. Like, that's what you're listening to and engaged in right now. And step 1 is creating emotional rapport, but then there's 10 elements that have to be maintained throughout the emotional rapport building process. There's like 10 elements. And there's 4 energies. And we're not going to cover them all today. because we're digging deeper today. We're digging deeper into the space of emotional rapport and want to really stay tight. And my outcome for today is that you know the 5 questions, not that you know the 10 elements, just the 5 questions that drop in under emotional rapport. And you get a little bit of access to it, a little bit of feel for it, just the beginning. Like the training wheels are on, like we're out of the big wheel, and we're just going to get like the training wheels on and go for a little ride. It's going to be like wobbly. It's not going to feel as safe as the big wheel. It's going to wobble. It's going to shake a little, but we're not going to take the training wheels off. We're not going to start to get like overwhelmed by the 10 indispensable elements today. We're going slower. We're going deeper. Because what I do often, if you've experienced me before, some of you have seen me, multiple times, I will condense an immense amount in to give people a sense of how much I know and how unique it is, to pique people's curiosity. In these trainings, we're going to go slower. We're going to go deeper. We're creating mastery. We're giving unique distinctions over time so they stick. We play with them. We're not drinking out of a fire hose. The huddles will be like a little fire hose like. I'll give you that. These weekly hour-and-a-half calls, they're going to be something different. They're going to slow it down and make sure the principle gets in and goes deeper. Does that make sense, Fernando?
100%. I agree. That's awesome.
By the way. All right. So emotional rapport building. We're not talking 10 elements. These 5 questions without the 10 elements don't work. Without the 4 energies, they don't work. We're covering neither of those today. We're covering the 5 questions, not the 10 elements, not the 4 energies. We'll get to those. We're going to touch on those next week. We're going to play with those on each of the 15-minute morning ones. We'll play a little bit with energies this week, right? But for now, let's realize we need to master the energies and when to use them and how to use them. We need to have our 10 indispensable elements, truly know and understand them. So they're like reflexive. They're just a part of us. We're not thinking about them anymore, just like we don't think about how to speak English. Like you don't go, oh, what's the word for like book? Like, no, it's a book, right? You just book. At one point, you had to be taught book. So we're going to like have those elements show up that way for us and the energy show up that way for us. But first, let's start with emotional rapport building, okay? So step 1 of emotional rapport building is where have you been? I'll give you the 5 questions, and then I'm going to give you the context of why they make so much sense. So here's what they are, then the context of why this actually works, okay? So you believe. I'm hoping you just believe anyway, but I want to also give you some support so that you have a reason to also believe, right? So the questions are, where have you been? Where are you? Number 1, where have you been? Number 2 is, where are you? Number 3 is, where are you going? Number 4 is, what's working? And number 5 is, what are the challenges? Where you been? Where are you? 3, what's working? I'm sorry, where are you going? 3. 4 is what's working. 5, what are the challenges? One more time. 1, where you been? 2, where are you? 3, where are you going? 4, what's working? 5, what are the challenges? In that mechanism, that 5-component mechanism, the depth of the emotional rapport you will create will be mind-numbing. Okay, we'll come back to playing inside those 5 questions in a moment, but now let me explain what's actually happening and why this is such a gift for you to give to people and why it's so wildly effective. Because the integrity-based influence model, remember, is never about taking advantage of people. This isn't a technique to take control of people. It's a technique to reveal truth to people, your truth to people. Step 1 is emotional rapport, so the lines of communication are open. Now, the reason this works is because we're never guessing. And everyone has been somewhere, is going somewhere, has things that are working, and has things that are not. So like everyone falls into that category versus ideas like, oh, do you like football? Oh, I see a picture on your wall and that must mean that you like art, right? We're guessing. There's not a common framework, and the things that we're guessing about often when we meet people and try to communicate with people, I love your suit, I love your shoes. Some people feel great about that. I don't particularly care if you like my shoes or my suit. So you're guessing. And for most people, there's a perception that flattery is often false. And if we begin to create relationship with people by flattery off the bat, it can land incongruently, like it's fake, right? Emotional rapport building is an understanding that as we meet people, we encounter strangers, as we build a relationship, that it's a progressive process because our amygdala, like that part of our brain that says, oh my God, we're going to get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger in the bushes, lies to us and tells us that strangers, I mean, I guess that could happen, but not typically in a business setting, that strangers equal danger. Like so if you're a stranger, you equal danger to someone. It's like what you are, right? You're danger. And so there's a mechanism to help people relax their brain so they don't feel afraid. And like when you're selling to people, when you're influencing people to say yes to you about something, you're in a business setting, everybody's on guard. They may appear open. They may appear like yes. They have certainly their own plans and thoughts about why they came and what they'd like. But when you get into the space of beginning to talk about yourself, what you're up to, what's happening, people begin to get really scared, nervous, and uncomfortable because people also just don't like to say no to people. So you might talk to them, and their big fear might be like the awkwardness of saying no, how to say no, how to get themselves out of a situation. You know, it's uncomfortable. It's scary. I had one of those today. I was on a phone call with somebody who was asking me with no rapport for all kinds of things, and I still felt like uncomfortable and like I don't want to be in this. You know, it's not a way we want to feel. So that piece of our brain is like super active. The people that you're communicating with, it's super active. This like fight or flight reflex of like, don't put me in any uncomfortable situation. I don't want to get like eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, AKA I don't want to be asked to buy something, make a mistake buying something, or have to say no. All that's present for everybody you meet in these different functions and places and called the world, right? So the mechanism of emotional rapport building is designed to short circuit that process and do something completely different. Now, I share all this because there's a wild, unbelievable, totally insane dynamic that I've experienced for 2 decades. I have people that work with me and work closely with me that hear me talk about these mechanisms all the time. In fact, some of them, all of them, I write paychecks to, right? And it is wild to me. Now remember, like not everybody is primarily involved in sales, and there's attorneys that work for me. They do great work for people, doing a fantastic job. They're really talented at what they do, but they also want to develop business on the outside. So their job is not to develop business on the outside only, right? It might be a small part or no part of what they do to be at least entitled, be at least somebody that we're going to keep on a part of the team because they're an effective attorney, but they'll be running around saying, I want more, I want to grow, I want to develop, and I'll do these teachings. I'll share concepts with people, and then I'll go to a meeting with one of them, and I will watch them violate every single principle of emotional rapport building imaginable, although they've sat in 7 trainings with me, and they've been on the huddles every single day. And so let that be like a warning, something to avoid, like an electrical wire on the ground. Please don't let that be you. You're spending your time listening. Thank you. You're giving me your trust. Thank you. And in this process, I promise you, is a road to places that you want to get to. If you want to make more money in less time with more magic, like it's right here. But from this day forward, I'm challenging you to begin a new process of going from hello to yes with people, a new process of like functioning in the world. And you've been conditioned to say, well, the way I communicate is like who I am. It's like what I am. And I'll tell you, it's not. It's not, unless you've chosen an entirely intentional process of communicating. You stopped and said, wait a minute, I communicate this way because my parents did, my teachers did. This is like, I communicate this way because I never really thought about it. I just do. It isn't you. It was like this crazy set of random conditioning that occurred by who your friends were, what TV shows you watched, how your parents, your family, your friends, all of these things result in how you communicate. It isn't who you are at all. At all. Just like the level of your physical fitness like isn't who you are, it's a byproduct of choices. So the way you communicate is a byproduct of choice. It isn't who you are. Okay. Total disruption, hopefully like destroying knowingness and creating access and acceleration to like what is for you. Now, so emotional rapport building, back to this specifically, works because you're taking people through a journey with you to get to know you, but really by you getting to know them. And of course, remembering that in every conversation we ever have with everyone, the most important thing in the world to them is them. It's what people love to talk about. So emotional rapport building captures this because in the process of emotional rapport building, now here's a key distinction, give you 5 questions. Where you been? Where are you? Going? What's working? What are the challenges? Right? Those 5. There's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. And I will just trickle in the indispensable elements right now, a couple of them. One is that you only engage in open-ended questions. When you're building emotional rapport, you only engage in open-ended questions. And open-ended questions are questions that are not yes or no questions. They lead to answers that are expansive, not yes or no. So an open-ended question begins with who, what, when, where, why, how. Those are open-ended questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how. Closed-ended questions begin with is, are, was, were. Is, are, was, were. So closed-ended questions could get us a yes or a no. We're going to use closed-ended questions later in this model. We are not using them at all in emotional rapport building. Now pause again before everybody feels a little stressed. There's a structure here. Like there's a lot going on here. There's a lot that's new. We have our training wheels on, right? We're in new space. It's going to feel uncomfortable in the beginning. Bear with the discomfort. Keep moving yourself forward and through it. As we work through this entire process, it'll become wildly natural. I want to give you one exception or 2 exceptions actually, to the no declaratory statement rule, because it's open-ended questions, declaratory statements and then a period, open-ended questions and then a question mark. The only time we're going to use declaratory statements in the process of emotional rapport building is when we have an acknowledgement and a validation. Like acknowledgements and validations of people, and we'll explain more about that as we go along, are really recognizing people for who and what they are, and we can make that statement. So, for example, an acknowledgement might sound like, hey Fernando, thanks so much for being so fully present. Like if we're talking to him, let's say Fernando's telling me about his excitement about this technology, and I don't know, and I'm not me, I'm just some random person he's talking to. But like, Fernando, I just want to share with you, like the passion with which you're communicating about that subject is really powerful and unique. Like it's a genuine acknowledgement of something you're experiencing in the other person. So the only exceptions to open-ended questions in the where you been, where are you going, what's working, what are the challenges, the 5 components of emotional rapport building, are when you get to a space, right, of an appropriate acknowledgement and validation. That's it. So emotional rapport building equals 5 questions, categories of questions. It equals open-ended questions, not closed-ended, meaning who, what, when, where, why, and how, not is, are, was, were, and it has the sprinkling in of appropriate acknowledgement and validation, and we have also opportunities and rules for that. So it's not like randomized. We'll explain when acknowledgement and validation comes into the situation, okay? So now, when we say where you been, where you going, where you been, where are you going, like what's working, what the challenge is, those aren't singular questions that you move through like from one to the other. They're categories, they're spaces that you stay in for as long as the person wants to stay in those spaces. So where you been, and by the way, let's have this. When you first meet somebody, right? So when you first meet somebody randomly, I'm going to give a little distinction for emotional rapport building access. When you first meet somebody randomly, you're going to start with basically what brings you here. It's the most simple, basic question, like, oh, awesome, like, great to meet you. Hey, Fernando, like, how are you? Awesome. Hey, by the way, like, what brings you here? You know, like, and I would say the thing, like, hey, what brings you to the New Jersey, what brings you to the Bar Association meeting? You know, what brings you to this, Tony Robbins event? What brought you to the world of Tony Robbins? Some beginning question for how they came to be right where they are in that moment, and then we're going to work backwards, right? That's such a natural flowing thing because something brought them here, and typically it's an out of the ordinary thing. So if I meet people in the Tony Robbins ecosystem, a great question I would often ask, and this is like an opener, and then we're going to move back to the 5 categories. So the opener will be something like, hey, by the way, Ben, I'm sitting with Ben Fox. Hey, Ben, like, what brought you to the Tony Robbins ecosystem, originally? And there's a story, because most people don't go to a Tony Robbins event. So most people have something that would be really interesting and compelling to talk about. So it's a great access point. Hey, so like, what brings you to the accounting, meeting? Like, what brought you to the accounting society? Like, you're asking an open-ended question about something to be true. Like, something brought them here. So it's a simple question. Hey, so what brings you here, right? Now, when we get into the space, so once that answer is there, it could take us a couple different directions, and let's play with it. So, Fernando, are you game and present? Did we lose Fernando? Is Fernando
Yes.
muted?
No, I'm right here. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Yeah, all good, bud. So let's play this game a little bit to like show how this like actually works. So let's pretend that I meet you at a landmark forum. You attended the landmark forum, correct?
Yes, sir.
Better yet, I met you. Let's go with real. I met you at Business Mastery, a Tony Robbins event.
Yeah.
So let's say that night. So let's just go back in. So like, hey, Fernando, what's up, man? How are you? Nice to meet you.
Hey, Sean, what's going on, man?
Hey, brother. Hey, by the way, like, so what brought you to the Tony Robbins ecosystem?
It's like a wild story. Met this amazing photographer named Zung, who is like an amazing soul, who brought me over to a platinum dinner and gave me access to Susan Lee, who then, brought me as her guest and introduced me to like what a lion was. And then like, I just kind of wanted to grow my business and see what was possible out there. And, I ended up at Business Mastery in West Palm.
Cool. All right. So as an example, there's a ton of stuff that just happened there. So your first access now in emotional rapport building is you're looking for 3 things to ask more questions into. 3 things. Okay? And this is a wildly important distinction. First, and they're all about energy. You're looking to go where the energy is. Okay? So number 1, you're looking for words that represent energy or uniqueness. Words that represent energy or uniqueness. Something like interesting. Like you said the word lion. Like, that's weird. Like, what's a lion? Like, so any words that represent energy or uniqueness. And it's an amazing story. It's a wild story. Fernando used something provocative and different. So you're listening is for unique and different words. Second, It's for any vocal quality changes that would represent something he's excited about. So if all of a sudden he's talking and, yeah, I was going along, and then I met Susan Lee, like, okay, Susan Lee is not unique and different, but his vocal qualities changed when he said Susan Lee. I'm listening for that. And I'm also seeking any physiological changes, like his body gets engaged, there's movement happening, there's energy that's flowing. When we recognize any of those three things, we're going to ask questions into them. And the questions, so we're going to ask questions into energetic change in words, in vocal quality, and in physiology. That's what we're seeking with our presence and listening. So Fernando, let's pose a couple of different ones. So I heard Fernando say the Lions thing. What I might say is, like, and watch this, because when people start to learn something, they make the questions long. We want to make the questions short, right? So when I said who, what, was, when, why, how, right? We can sometimes cut the what off. We can make it really short. So Fernanda said the word lion, and let's say I didn't know what a lion was. It's kind of interesting, different, unique. Lion, Tony Robbins, I don't understand what that is. I don't have to go, hey, Fernando, can you please explain to me what a lion is? That's a rapport. The more words I say, and you say, and create emotional rapport building, the more rapport is defeated. Okay? The more rapport is defeated. So what I would say to Fernando is like, lions? So really I said is, hey, Fernando, what's a lion? Right? I said a whole bunch there. I said, lions? One word with inflection, a little focus on me because it's one word. Now I'm curious, right? Like he feels that. We'll talk more about that in emotional and energetic transference. We'll talk about the elements more in the next couple of days, and certainly our next hour and a half call is we're gonna dive deep into the elements. Okay, but those being present combined with like this how to, right? Is so watch this. Hey, so lions. So Fernando, I'm asking you now, like we're in flow. You like ba ba ba. You say lions. I go lions.
Yeah, the Lions. So I asked Susan, like, hey, who should I be talking to? Who should I meet? Like, who are some people? And she tells me that there's this Lion group. And I'm like, okay, like, what does that mean? And she explains how it's like the inner circle. It's invite only. They sit all the way in the front. They get little things on their chair. That's like a big deal. So I'm like, I got to figure out like who these people are. So that led me to kind of the front row and led me to meeting you. Actually, that's there's a couple pieces missing in the story, but it led me to meeting you.
Okay, cool. Now, so we're out of roll again. And Fernando said a number of things. What I might go is, he said Susan a couple of times, so another access point might be, oh, hey, Fernando, who's Susan? Short question, like, who's Susan? Right? So that would be another great conversational piece. But now we got a flow going between us. So, but I probably, like, think for a second. Now, like, go into your own mind and heart and think of, like, what else is interesting about what Fernando's saying? Like, what else is interesting? Well, just think for a second before I say anything. Like, what for you comes up? Like, think of 3 things interesting about what Fernando's saying. Add a little depth. Like, what are we learning about Fernando? What might you be thinking about Fernando? What might Fernando want to be talking about? Like, those are the kinds of, like, listening, processing that's going on. Just think. What's another one? What's another one? And so what comes up for me maybe is, hey, Fernando, so can I ask just a weird question? So permission, like a little bit, right? Hey, so what made you interested in the Lions in the first place? Right? Because pause. So now we're out of roll. Like, that's kind of interesting. Like, he was very drawn and very interested in the Lions and the people in the front row. Like, there's something there. Like, not everybody thinks about that. Not everybody's interested in meeting those people. And Fernando staying out of roll for a second. Does that make sense? Like, that's Not everybody is thinking that way. So remember back to things that are unique, like that's unique. Would you agree, Fernando?
Yes.
Yeah. So what becomes intriguing and interesting about you, meaning you, everyone, all of us, in the process of emotional rapport building, is when we're asking questions like other people don't ask. And the more we can be kind of normal, authentic, and flowing, and be showing that we're listening at depth, the deeper the connection goes. And that's how like our mastery skyrockets in emotional rapport building. So hey, Fernando, okay, quick question. So like, what was it about the Lions? Like not and our tonality and vocal qualities, we'll get back to that in the indispensable elements next week and in the mornings, but that matters. So I'm just sharing some of what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, so Fernando, what about the Lions like was interesting to you?
What really struck me was that it was invite only, and I thought that was really interesting. People spoke very well of them and who they were and what they were up to in the world and the proximity that they had around each other and other influential people. And I was interested in being around that. Proximity is power, something I've heard Tony say a lot. And Susan had blessed me and Zung had blessed me with an opportunity to be there. So I wanted to take full advantage, play full out, and like see what happens.
Okay. Now, Fernando and I have connected enough to begin easily enough. I could have done it even 2 questions ago. Easily enough to drop in to emotional rapport building. Legitimately now. So, and remember, you go, well, you kind of have rapport. He's like telling you some things. Like, no, I know like nothing about him. I know, well, that's not true. I know some things about him, but I don't know his version of his life story. I simply know about the question I asked of him, and we're in this like limited little window now about him, Tony Robbins, this space, what's happening. That's not who Fernando is, but we've began the conversation. Now I'm going to drop in and begin at the beginning, which is, the first question is, where you been? Right? So I might go, hey, Fernando, by the way, amazing, like super cool, great to meet you, have awesome energy. That would be an acknowledgement validation. Can I ask you a question? Like, so where are you from? Right? That's where you've been. Good.
Oh, yeah. So I live in Jersey. I live in New Jersey, Jerseyan, and my family's from Colombia, and I'm first generation here in America. And yeah, that's kind of like where I come from.
Okay. So Fernando just gave us enormous amounts, right? Fernando, were you cheating on that and trying to help me, or were you just being legit straight up?
I'm a proud Jerseyan. I love that I'm fucking from Colombia, and I take a lot of pride in being first generation here. So that was like totally like that was there. But that was
totally legit, and you're not trying to help me.
I'm not. No, that was totally legit.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like amazing, because Fernando just told us exactly those 3 things. That he loves being from New Jersey. How do I know that? Because he said he's a Jerseyan, right? Like that's an extra thing. He said that his family's from Colombia, and that he's first generation. So he told us an extraordinary amount about himself. Extraordinary amount, right? So I have all kinds of space to play in, and so do you now, because we've connected quickly with questions about how he got there. I'm listening to him. It's all good. Now I ask somebody where they're from, because a lot of times when I share this model with people, and I do it everybody I meet, this is how I build a relationship. People are like, I don't know. Does that really work? Of course it does. Of course it does. I promise. Play with it. Try it. And if you're finding something's not working, it's going to be because the 10 indispensable elements are out of whack, not because the model doesn't work. And we'll talk more about the elements. Okay? So I would go from there and say, amazing, Jersey, like what part? That's simple, right? Short. Amazing, Jersey, what part? Amazing, Jersey, what part? 4 words. Amazing, Jersey, what part? Rhythmic, flowing, connecting, short, precise, about Fernando. Never! Oh my God, Fernando, you're from New Jersey? So am I. Never. Death. Level 1 listening. We'll talk more about level 1 listening and the elements. That's level 1 listening, taking the focus off of the person back to us. Never declaratory statement, never level 1 listening, all about Fernando. We'll have a time to share that we're both from New Jersey in a different step, not at step 1 of emotional rapport building. All we are is in step 1 emotional rapport building in this first single question, where you been? So, Jersey, what part?
So I live in, it's a town called Carlstadt, little town, love it there. But it's close to the Meadowlands, usually Giant Stadium. It's like, it depends on where you're from in Jersey. It might be central or might be northern, but it's around Giant Stadium.
Cool. All right. So we know that we know a couple of things now. I didn't hear, so in thinking about like energy, Giant Stadium's unique, so that was an access, but that's a pretty important thing. I'm giving you like the analytical processing that you'll be doing in like nanoseconds over time. So what I'm hearing is Giant Stadium. I'm hearing little town, likes it a lot, but like he didn't stay there. He went to Giant Stadium. So I'm not getting like a deep urgency to talk about Carlstadt. Am I hearing that right, Fernando? This is we're out of roll.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So like you like Carlstadt, but it's not like your favorite topic. Is that fair?
Agreed.
Okay. So I heard that because otherwise he doesn't say Giant Stadium. He goes deeper into Carlstadt, right? Because he told us about Columbia. He told us about first generation. So I'm not hearing much about Carlstadt. I am hearing it's near Giant Stadium, but that doesn't mean he loves the Giants because it's just it's a landmark and it's close by to give representation. It doesn't mean he doesn't love the Giants, but it certainly doesn't mean necessarily that he wants to talk about the Giants. By the way, Fernando, do you like the Giants? I'm not asking that rapport build. I'm asking this like in our out of role. Do you like the Giants?
That was a good one because yes, but it's not my favorite topic and I don't know much about sports. I'm a Giant fan by default.
Great. So I heard all of that. I heard enough to know, oh my God, so do you like the Giants? No. Right? I'm not going to ask that because I don't know enough. So, right? Like, and that's how these micro distinctions are why people fall in love with you and give you lots of money. Right? Why people let you give them services and they will give you money. Like, I don't mean that crassly. I'm just trying to create a little disruption because this is dense. I'm trying to shake it up a little bit, right? It's dense, but that's the reality of how this works, right? Like, this is the beginning of people building a deep relationship. And we're just in these, like, micro little distinctions up front. Okay. So, as you go along in the progression, Fernando, of all this and everyone on the call, as you look at all of these things, and you're like figuring this out, trying to understand what's happening and all that, I might say at that juncture, so by the way, when did your family come to the U.S.? Because he said he's first generation. Clearly, it's something that matters to him, right? So I'm not going to skip that. That would be crazy. Why? When Fernando serves up something that he's energetic about, that's unique to say, like my family's from Ireland. I don't go, I'm from Ireland and I'm like 10th generation and my family came here in 1851. Like, that doesn't mean much to me, right? So I don't say that. He said something. Nobody says anything that doesn't matter. Nobody will ever tell you anything that does not matter. Every single thing they say is because they want you to know. Every single thing, okay? In the beginning, it's going to be like overwhelming. Like, wait, should I ask this? Should I not? Like, but it's going to become very fluid over time, okay? We're just starting. So now, hey, so Fernando, by the way, when did your family originally come from Columbia?
They came in the early 1980s.
Awesome. And so, right, there wasn't a lot there. Now, Fernando and I are like breaking pattern and going back and forth. So in the early 1980s, that was pretty crisp, pretty short, not a lot of stuff to go from there. So I might then accelerate and move forward. Because there's just like, it just finished. There wasn't anything unique. There wasn't anything emotional. There wasn't anything energetic. It kind of just landed there, right? Does that feel right, Fernando?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that may also, by the way, tell me other things, but let's not digress too deeply for today, okay? But there was like a crispness to like, boom, done, like there, which tells me that there may be like some stuff circulating around those dynamics that like may not be something he feels like particularly talking about. Do I sense that correctly or incorrectly, Fernando?
There may be some. I would talk about it in like a different sense.
Got it. Okay. So I would say, okay, so I'm hearing you grew up in Carlstadt. Like, what happened next for you? Right. So that's where you're from. Grew up in Carlstadt. Didn't want to talk about that much. Like, what happened next? Like, what'd you do after Carlstadt?
Went to NJCU, New Jersey City University. Got a full scholarship academically, and I ended up graduating.
So, dude, full scholarship. It's awesome. Congratulations. Like, that's an acknowledgement validation. Like, and Fernando clearly said full scholarship because it mattered to him. So, and by the way, what did you get a full scholarship in?
It was purely academics. I had a 4.1 GPA in high school.
Boom. Where'd you go to high school, Fernando?
Cliffside Park. Went to Cliffside Park High School. Good times.
Awesome. But not a lot there. Cliffside Park High School, good times. There wasn't a lot of emotional, energetic transference there. So it's not like, a lot of richness, but there was a lot of energy around 4.1 GPA, a lot of energy around full scholarship, acknowledge and validate. Like Fernando, right now, we're in roll and out of roll. We're in roll, out of roll, back and forth, right? Doing this like very mechanically right now. But when I say, brother, like even though we're doing this back and forth, and you know what an acknowledgement is, what a validation is. When I go, hey, brother, listen, 4.1 GPA at Cliffside Park High School, full academic scholarship, that's like drop the mic, dude. Like, how'd you do that? How does that feel when I say that?
It feels awesome. It's good times, good memories. It was
really, when I just said that on this phone call, did it really feel awesome?
Yeah, no, I'm being totally honest. Like, I'm just kind of walking around. I'm actually walking in your office and I'm just feeling it.
Yeah. So understanding everyone, acknowledgments and validations, even when I'm telling Fernando I'm acknowledging and validating him, it's a part of a integrity-based human influence process that he knows, that we talk about all the time, that we're in and out of mechanically teaching at the slowest pace imaginable what is happening. It still feels good. That is the superpower of acknowledgement and validation, which Oprah Winfrey said is the reason she held the microphone for 30,000 people, because she said, I see you, I hear you, and what you say matters to me. So the superpower and emotional rapport building of dropping in appropriate acknowledgments and validations are exactly why Oprah is a billionaire. It's like part of it, not all of it, but it's an indispensable part of it. Without I see you, I hear you, and that's, by the way, her words. Watch her if you feel like it. It's a 5-minute clip. Watch the final minutes of her final episode when people ask, like, how and why you were so successful. She distills it all the way down to acknowledgement and validation. I see you, I hear you, and what you say matters. Fernando just acknowledged, like, it felt good. Okay? So let's keep going. So Fernando, dude, amazing. Like, and how was college for you?
College was a great time. Ended up joining a fraternity, TKE, which was hands down one of the most amazing experiences that I had in that time. It was my first leadership opportunity. I had my highs, I had my failures, and it gave me that like social ability, because I wasn't as social and didn't have the ability to communicate or express my emotions until about like 18, which is when I went to college, 17, 18.
All right, let's drop out. That dude just dropped insane amounts of unique stuff to talk about and ask about. So like, and I'll always go with like highest and most unique. So highest and most unique was how amazing fraternity was, first leadership opportunity, like that was all huge. But then it got topped at the end by something you don't normally hear people say. Remember, you're looking for unique. And when he said that was totally unique was he goes, yeah, and like I didn't express myself emotionally. Like that's really unique stuff to say. And you want unique stuff because that's how you go deeper, and that's what the dude wants to talk about, right? So I would go in that moment like, wow. Like I would acknowledge and validate again. Hey, Fran, if I could tell, like that's an incredibly self-aware thing to say. How did you become so self-aware? Like that's the question I would ask in that moment. Now, when I ask you that question, Fernando, that acknowledgement, validation, pivoting to question. So, wow, that's an incredibly self-aware thing to say. That's the acknowledgement, validation. And I pivot to, how did you become so self-aware? Does that feel good, that I'm acknowledging you and seeing you?
Yeah, I feel like I just got a shot of dopamine, and I even got a little nervous. I'm like, that's a big ass question. In a good
right.
way.
Like, so,
like an excitement way.
so now,
Like
all of
live.
a sudden, by the way, you go, well, this is taking a really long time. No, it's not. It's taking long because I'm teaching, sharing, coaching, and training right now. Teaching, sharing, coaching, training. This whole progression, if I met Fernando, would have taken 3 minutes. We're here in 3 minutes. We're at, how did you become so self-aware with a stranger in 3 minutes? And I'm guessing, Fernando, we're about to get to deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper things that are really important to you. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah. So 3 minutes in, that's how fast it happens. Fernando, you've been around me a bunch. I just want some acknowledgement, validation back, some social proof, actually. Not acknowledgement, social proof. Do I do this with people? What we're doing right now?
Yeah, all the time. And what I'm always blown away by is how consciously you choose to do it, like no matter what's going on.
Please elaborate.
I love that story of Scott. So there's, so we're in staging. So we're in business mastery, Vegas, bajillion things going on. Life is running a mile a minute. We have to go somewhere because that's what happens in that place when you're with Sean. You always got to go somewhere. So we're like going somewhere, and we're going there. We got to get there. And there was a gentleman who the night before we had thrown an event at a penthouse at the MGM. It was like an insane, and it like usually has a capacity of about 90 people, and we had about 210 there. And that was an insane experience. And this gentleman, Scott, left his book bag and had told me to grab it, had told Sean to grab it. And we had just forgotten to grab it. So we're there, we're leaving. Scott taps Sean on the shoulder, and Nicole and myself were looking to like go. And Sean just turns around in Sean fashion. And we knew in that moment we lost them because a couple minutes later, they ended up sitting in Indian style like position on the floor, like talking. And I'm like, we were there. And it was like incredible because in my head, there was so much rush. And in Sean's mind, I was like, I'm choosing Scott. And now Scott is doing amazing things with us in the science in the world of marketing. And it's incredible to see from that moment when I chose rush and Sean chose sits, like an amazing relationship was birthed. So that was like proof of what's possible for me.
Yeah, and thank you, Fran. 5 minutes in, Scott was sharing that part of his mission is to create a tsunami of stoke in the world and a groundswell for good. And like all of a sudden we have a deep emotional rapport connection going, and we were both building towards things we wanted to do and connect. And it was remarkable. Okay, so Fernando goes, I go, hey, Fernando, how did you become so self-aware? So let's drop back in. How did you become so self-aware?
So I had some not so fortunate events happen when I was 23. I'm 27 now. And that led me to like a spurt of motivation where I read 56 books. I've read, or more like listened to about 100 a year since. And that led me to different courses, things like Landmark, things like NLP, Dale Carnegie, E-Myth, 7 Principles of, Think and Grow Rich, all these different books. And I became immersed in it. I loved it. It became an obsession. And working on myself became like this masterful art piece. And it really started there. And
Dude, the only person that I think I've ever heard of who read that many books by the time that they were 27 was Tony Robbins. That is remarkable. And you are one of the most committed people I've ever met to their own growth and development.
Thank you.
That's an acknowledgement, validation, right? So that's what I would legitimately have said to him in that moment. Acknowledgement, validation. Remarkable. And how does that feel to be acknowledged and validated that way, Fernando?
It feels good. Game on. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So continuing along our merry journey, we're still with where you been. I would continue to play in that space and ask Fernando more questions like, really? That many books? Like, why? Like, I'm going to ask it. Why'd you do that? That's amazing. Why?
I felt like there was another way, and so when I looked at myself and when I had accelerated or when I had grown is when I had like a mentor or when I had someone like that. So I said at this point, I'm going to work with what I got, and I started finding digital ones and spiritual ones and ones in books, and that I knew that through that there was going to be an access way, a point, a different destination.
Wow, dude, amazing. So I would keep going. Remember, for the sake of time, we're down to our little under our last 15 minutes. So I'm going to speed up. But again, this would be like 4.5 minutes into communicating with Fernando. We're talking about the core of how he views life. And Fernando, I'm feeling a little bit like, are you starting to feel just, I don't mean crying, but are you feeling, kind of in a heightened emotional state?
Dude, I've been nervous since you asked, since the question came on. Like, man, it showed up. Like, when did you become so self-aware? So yeah, like I know we're in it, and it's still like, it's, it's nerve-wracking. It's exciting. It's like, something that I think about deeply. So yeah.
Yeah, we're going deep and core, and that's why it's called emotional rapport. By the way, it's not surface rapport, it's not real rapport, it's emotional rapport. And all this becomes normal, natural, exciting, energized. Things are happening between people that make it very uncharacteristic how you're connecting and communicating, which, by the way, is what draws people towards you. It's what draws people towards you when you're different, when you're unique, but like not weird, not inauthentic, not mechanical, just like there. And all of a sudden, we're like in this amazing conversation. And one of the byproduct of all this is people they want to talk to you more. Because Oprah said, I see you, I hear you, what you say matters. That's what draws people to you. It's what makes them want to continue in their conversation with you. Okay, so now I'd ask, we've given the examples, plenty of places to go, more questions to ask, but now let's skip forward. So this is where you've been. Let's be like, so dude, so let's pretend we've exhausted that. So like, what are you up to now? Like, what's happening for you? That's like, where are you? Question category 2. So where are you?
And I'm back in January. So I'm in the process of growing an event company and a branding business. I've been doing events for 13 years.
Actually, you know what? Let's skip now. Let's say that we're here now, just right now. Let's have some real fun. Okay. So
Okay.
Hey, Fernando, so what's happening now? Like, where are you? Like, we're in now. We're right now, right?
Okay. Yeah. Life's freaking incredible. I'm seeing an intense level of acceleration. I'm growing things with you, Sean. This platform is exciting. Ecosystems are there. We're creating amazing relationships rapidly, like maximizing them, not only for like us, but for them and their partners. That's insanely exciting. Time with family is beautiful. My girlfriend, Martha, is, an incredible partner. Things are doing very well. I want to keep growing with them. So it's a really exciting time.
Oh, brother, that's awesome. Okay, that's where. So he gave us plenty of stuff to ask about and talk about. Like Martha, like he mentioned Martha. It's really important. Like, hey, where'd you meet? Like that could be a question, right? Like, so there's a bunch of different places to go with this, but it's like everything is fantastic. He's saying there's all these ecosystems expanding. So I might say, you said it's exciting, it's amazing. Say like, hey, what would you say are some of the most exciting things going on right now, brother?
Some of the most exciting things going on right now is the speed of growth. Like everything around is not, I'm not the only one accelerating. Everything and everyone around me is accelerating. And that is like really exciting. You, other places. So being in that space and being in a high pace of momentum, consistency, habits, patterns, and time blocking, like that's, is creating like a form, a gladiator.
Yeah. So, yeah, dude. So I would definitely like gladiator. Like I would say that, right? I would ask that question because that's like an amazing access. Like people don't just say gladiator like in normal conversation when they're referring to business. So we drop in there. But for the sake of time, we'll continue to move forward. When we're complete with like where are you, then we transition to category 3. The third category of emotional reportable, then be like, so Fernando, dude, sounds like you got a lot going on, brother. Like, and you could be more excited. Like, where's this all going? Like if you win, you have it all your way. Like where does this all end up?
You know, the ultimate goal, the vision that I see possible is what I call rewriting humanity. And it stems from rewriting the way that humans,
Dude,
what
and
they see
I
as
know I'm
possible.
interrupting. I go, dude, rewriting humanity? Like, whoa, like what's that about? It's okay to interrupt, like, you know what I mean, in conversation, because when you're acknowledging and validating, it's okay to interrupt with an acknowledgement and validation, because that's like, drop the mic, rewriting humanity. What's that about? Like, where, whoa, what do you mean?
It comes from a synthesized process of writing my mission statement in a very intense, crazy situation, and then creating my manifesto with a mentor that I worked with, and then transition to like a massive clarity. Actually, it landed for me in Legendary, like I forget where, and through the conversation of Jonathan Cohen and that environment, like rewriting humanity was born. And it stems from a deep-rooted place of wanting to see what's possible for humans, maximizing humans' ability to build relationships with each other, and then ultimately changing the trajectory of what humans see themselves like on this planet. And I'm doing that through strategically partnering with the right people in service of bringing integrity back into self-education.
Amazing. So a natural question at step 3 of where is this all going is then why? Like he just dropped some insanity, some incredible uniqueness. Wow, like that's just amazingness going on. I might say, so Fernando, that's extraordinary. Like why? And leave it right there, short. Fernando, that's extraordinary. Why? Like why do you care?
Because I feel like I've been given like an opportunity, even from like when I was born, and that's a story in itself. And I feel as if like with the time I have on this planet and the legacy that I want to leave behind, it has to be, it doesn't have to be, it gets to be at an exponential game, like a massive global game. So my legacy statements are rooted around this rewriting humanity, integrity back into self-education as like a way to leave the world better than when I found it, or at least giving them access to what I wish, giving them, humanity, access to things I craved when I was younger.
Boom. Boom. That happens every single time. So Fernando, have we hit the deepest access yet?
Yeah, we're there. We are in it.
Right. And if we're not breaking in and out, in and out, in and out, like does that bring you almost to an emotional state, like heightened emotional state, potentially not that far away from tears?
Yeah, definitely. I'm an emotional dude. So not even getting to be in it is like, you know, this is what it is. This is why I wake up at 5:15 every day. This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the game.
And we're in role on a phone call with a whole bunch of people listening in. And for anybody that's like, because somebody asked me, actually, I've been asked this question hundreds of times, and I was asked it not long ago, like, is this like normal? Is this how it goes? Like people communicate this way? And the answer is yes. And it's a gift. People want to tell their story. People want to be heard, and people aren't heard by people. And that's why this is so insanely valuable as a gift you can give to people. To hear them, to acknowledge them, to validate them, to be a great witness for their life. That's what emotional rapport building is really about. And it leads to, because there were things I craved when I was little. Like that's what's going on, right? For all of us, there's stuff, there's reasons, there's places, there's things. And for most of us, we don't have anybody around us who cares, who takes the time. Like that's what is going on. And we become wildly unique when we enter space that way, if that makes sense, right? So final 2 pieces as we wrap up, we're under 5 minutes to go, would be, so wow, dude, like that's extraordinary. Now, I wouldn't leave it there. I would ask him, wow, craved as a child, like, what do you crave? Like, I would ask that next question because the access is so unique. But let's, for the sake of time, let's say we've come to completion in that space. I might say, Fernando, what an incredible vision. Now we're transitioning to step 4, category 4. What an incredible vision for your life, brother. Like, how's it going? Like, with all this, like rewriting humanity, like, how's it going? What's working for you?
What's working is focus and choice. It's aligning with what I call strategic partners. Was a massive breakthrough I got in business mastery in West Palm, was artist, leader, entrepreneur. And the clarity on that, my role is leader with skill and business development. I knew that my secret was to align with entrepreneurs. So since I chose to do that, life has been exponential in the most thrilling of ways.
Now, more questions to ask, but let's jump into step 5. So we complete that section by, again, going where the energy is, right? So all kinds of cool questions to ask there, but you're always seeking the highest and best question. Like, where he ended is where I would have continued there, right? Like, it's been amazing, and working with entrepreneurs, like, what's amazing, I might say, right? But move on to step 5. So, brother, like, all kinds of cool stuff. What would you say are the biggest challenges you're having?
Some of the biggest challenges I'm having is keeping consistent on the time blocking that I set. I know it's part of process mastering and an area that I want to grow in. So I know being more accelerated in that spot and staying true to time blocking is another access point in my growth and my leadership.
Awesome. Now, okay, uncharacteristically, Fernando is an incredibly evolved person working on himself in massive ways. What you'll tend to find is that when you get to what's working, people will immediately sort of move into what are the challenges, and people have a lot of stress, overwhelmed things. Fernando's in a really peak state, working on himself, lots of awesome stuff happening. So there's not a lot right now in that space for him, in the challenge space, but most people are in pain, like real pain. It's very present for them, and they'll be, really connected to the idea of sharing it and connecting and being heard. So those are the 5 steps. Where you been? Where are you? What's working? Where you been? Where you been? Where are you? Where you going? What's working? What are the challenges? We're going to pick up tomorrow. We're not done. We're going to just, have time for one question. We'll pick up tomorrow morning, though, with questions about this. So when we jump in tomorrow, this is going to be a jump-in spot of questions and what's happening. So does anybody have a question they'd like to ask about anything that we've covered so far today? I'll give a brief answer, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll pick it up tomorrow morning at 8:30. Any questions out there?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Tyler, by the way.
Hey, Tyler, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. So I've heard you go through this before, and I've used it in my own life. And one thing that's come up is I've had lunch with one of my friends, and I was kind of going through the process, but I don't think I did it right because it almost felt like he was being drilled, and I don't want that. So how do you, because I sometimes I think conversations should flow back and forth, but I know that the main goal is to build emotional rapport. So how do you make it so it doesn't seem like you're just asking a bunch of questions?
Yeah, amazing. So that's going to deal with the 10 elements, the 10 indispensable elements. So what is definitely coming up for me is if it's feeling like the other person is being drilled, if the other person is feeling like they're being drilled and it's showing up that way, it may mean it certainly means one of 2 things. One, the elements are dropping out. So you may not be loving them fully. You may not be fully present. It may feel mechanical, like you're going through steps to get there, as opposed to listening truly deeply. So some of the elements may be falling out, the elements are falling out. The one several that pop the most is maybe the listening. So if it's answer, question, feeling drilled, my coaching would be that we're not listening at level 5 and we're not really in flow, asking them questions about the things that are popping the most. Like that would be Tyler, my most direct access point for you. And it could be others, but certainly that one feels there. Because if it just feels question, answer, there's something that's not happening in flow. And it is going to get later into like pieces about what you're sharing as you begin to convey your unique identity and what's happening. But it's in that space. So there's work, there's access, and maybe tomorrow, or soon, you can give me a little better sense, or us a sense, of where it starts to feel that way. But my direct certainty is in the space of listening, and somehow there's like not rapport flowing. It's you executing the steps because you're like, okay, like where you been, where you going? I got to be like asking these questions. But the more flowing energy of like your congruence, which is an element, your matching and mirroring, which is an element, like vocal quality shifting, softening, curiosity rising. Like I've never had anybody say they feel like they're being drilled. So we're all good. I promise the model works. Now it's just increasing mastery in the indispensable elements. Does that make sense or no?
It does, and definitely this training of actually going more in depth and hearing your conversation with Fernando definitely opens my eyes to more elements that I've been missing in my conversations.
Yeah,
So
and so Tyler, no, thank you, brother. And like I picked my bike up when I took the training wheels off. I threw it off the fence. It ricocheted back and hit me in the face. Like that really happened. In Overpeck Park, in Richfield Park, New Jersey, like that happened. Same deal. Like I was just missing a few distinctions, and soon I was riding my bike and it was like flying. Just a few distinctions, right? Like in surfing. Like surfing's a little like crazy. Like there's a wave and a board and insane things are happening, and then all of a sudden people are riding on 4-foot waves and 10-foot waves and like giant waves. Even some people like there's like nothing happening. Same deal, brother. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your trust. Like there's massive acceleration sitting here present. So thank you for your question and your trust. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thanks, Sean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Blessings,
So with
everyone.
that. Yeah, blessings, everybody. Hey, we're complete for today. Back on tomorrow morning at 8:30. Thank you, everybody. Emotional rapport building, study your notes, play with this, have some fun, and find where it's not working. And then we're going to find the elements that are dropping out. We'll begin like drilling on the elements and sharing. But this is about mastery. It's not about just a rote system. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Ben, Nicole, everybody. Let's go get it. Have an amazing rest of the day. Thanks.
Take care, Mr. Callaghan. See everybody in the WhatsApp. Bye. See you.
Thanks.